Things that a normal, morally normal, even a very morally average or mediocre person would not, unprompted, do. For example, hold down their daughter at the age of 6, tear off her underwear, and cut her genitalia with a sharp stone. They wouldn't do that if they didn't think God was telling them to do it.
Rabbi, I suppose you've heard this question before. I think it's for the panel. Why do good things happen to bad people?
Why do bad people get away with murder? I have lost track of how many people have urged me to write a book by that title. And my response is, who would buy it? Who would you give it as a present to?
Well, it's too late for Mr. Madoff now, but he would have liked it a year ago.
I would say bottom line is, yeah, it's a very disturbing phenomenon. Most of the time, I think, you don't really get away with anything in this world. You pay for everything you take in this world in one currency or another. The Bernard Madoffs, even if he had not been caught, would have missed out on much of what it means to be a human being. The guy who cheats on his wife and doesn't get caught and thinks he's really clever and he's pulled it off will never know what it really feels like to invest all of your love in a single relationship. You pay for everything you take in life in one currency or another, and sometimes when the bill comes due, you go back and wish you'd played it differently.
Professor, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah.
I once said that the rabbi had given me a wonderful definition of the word envy. I envied his royalties. And there was a sense in which he spoke, and does speak, to the fundamental question that we all ask. But I would write a slightly different book. My book would be, why do good people do wicked things? And the church is full of good people who are tempted and actually sometimes succeed in doing wicked things. Now, my tradition teaches that there's the doctrine of original sin. It sort of explains everything. You're all naturally wicked, and you'll do wicked things unless you're inhibited against them, which provides a very rational theology, but wouldn't preach very well these days, especially, I'm sure, in Hartford, Connecticut. But the fact of the matter is, the greater question for me is people who want to do the right thing, want to be thought of as good and virtuous, often end up doing terrible things. And I think of St. Paul's famous line, the good that I would do, that I do not, and that which I would not do, that I do. That's the human and the moral dilemma. And it seems to me that's the task to which, confession, forgiveness, amendment of life, all of that is directed towards. So that would be my take, but I don't think my book would do as well as Rabbi's book.
Do you want to add anything?
Yeah.
When people ask, why do good things happen to bad people? They're really noticing that the world isn't fair. And that's true. Nature isn't moral, it's neutral. Earthquakes, disease, and luck don't target people based on virtue. The rabbi's answer, that everyone pays in some unseen way, sounds comforting, but there's no evidence for it. Studies on happiness and longevity show that dishonest or immoral people don't always suffer inside. Many live long, successful lives. Justice systems exist because life doesn't balance itself out. Then the Reverend brings up original sin, saying humans are naturally wicked. But science paints a different picture. Infants as young as 6 months show empathy and fairness in experiments, suggesting morality is innate, not divine. The idea that we're born broken was created to make sense of suffering in a world run by a supposedly loving God. Yet if that God allows pain and evil anyway, it raises a bigger question. Is he unwilling or unable to stop it?
Things that a normal, morally normal, even a very morally average or mediocre person would not, unprompted, do, for example, hold down their daughter at the age of 6, tear off her underwear, and cut her genitalia with a sharp stone. They wouldn't do that if they didn't think God was telling them to do it, or the mullahs, or if it's a boy, the rabbis weren't telling them to do it. One of the reasons why I have the lurid subtitle I do of my book, that Religion is a Poison, is that it makes ordinary moral people, compels them, forces them, in some cases orders them to do disgusting, wicked, unforgivable things. There's no expiation for the generations of misery and suffering that religion has inflicted in this way and continues to inflict, and I still haven't heard enough apology for it.
Rabbi, you want to add something?
Christopher, I've got to call you down on referring to circumcision as genital mutilation. My son cried more at his first haircut than he did at his bris. And statistically...
You weren't doing it right then.
Statistically, the only long-term effect that it seems to have on people is it increases their chances of winning a Nobel Prize.
I can't find the compulsory mutilation of the genitals of children a subject for humor in that way, or flippancy in that way. Maimonides says very plainly that it's designed to repress sexual pleasure, to deprive us, a male child as far as possible of the opportunity of that. The full excision, not just the snip or the full mandatory covenant is fantastically painful, leads to trauma, leads to the dulling of the sexual relationship, and can be in itself life-threatening at that moment. We have the records, I can show them to you, of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds in the United States, boy babies who've died or had life-threatening infections as a result of this disgusting practice. That a person as humane as yourself can sit here and think of that as a fit subject for humor shows what I mean. Religion makes morally normal people say and do disgusting and wicked things, and you've just proved my point for me. Shame on you for saying what you just said. Shame on you for saying it about your own son, my God.
Let's move on.
Yes, let's.
What next? Cutting the labia of little girls. At least Judaism doesn't do that.
This is a question.
What if a Muslim was to say to you just now, my little girl cried more at her first haircut than when I cut off her clitoris? What would you think of me if I was to say such a disgusting thing?
Well,
remember, we are not talking about detail here. We're talking about whether religion makes people behave better or not.
let's give the rabbi a chance. I wanted to move on, but let's give the rabbi a chance to respond to what you said, because it got pretty personal here. So,
Again, my experience in my own son, my own grandson, hundreds of congregants, has been that it's not nothing like what you're talking about, and that for whatever reason that this has become an issue for you, I just think is excessive.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
That I'm more personally...
There's an undertone of innuendo to this. Let's bring it on.
No, there's no innuendo there. What I'm saying is,
Sure.
I've lived through this personally, and...
You've inflicted it, is what you're saying.
I've been what?
You've inflicted it, or officiated at it, is what you're saying, isn't it?
Well, officiated, yes. Inflicted, no. Forget Maimonides. Maimonides has his hang-ups about
I should
that.
forget Maimonides. Since when do you say that?
Because on issues of sexuality, Maimonides has some very medieval ideas. I ran across the line in your book that Orthodox Jews have sex through a hole in a bed sheet. Do you know Orthodox Jews who told you they have sex that way?
No. I say it is said of Orthodox Jews that they may do that.
all right, gentlemen, I'm sorry to break this up.
That's a Reformed Jewish rumor about Orthodox.
We have a lot of questions from the audience, and I want to give others a chance.
Genital mutilation is no joke.
What Hitchens says here cuts straight to the core of why faith-based morality can be dangerous. He's pointing out that a normal, decent person would never harm a child, unless they believed a God told them to. And he's right. Across history, we've seen religion justify acts that would otherwise be seen as horrific, from genital mutilation and stoning to witch trials and holy wars. People think they're serving God, but they're actually surrendering their own moral judgment. Take circumcision. The rabbi tries to laugh it off, but Data from medical journals like Pediatrics and the Journal of Urology document hundreds of infant injuries and even deaths linked to religious circumcisions, especially when done outside medical settings. Maimonides, one of Judaism's most respected scholars, even admitted the practice was designed to dull sexual pleasure, not for hygiene, but to suppress desire. That's control, not compassion.
Which kind of Christian you had to be in order to be a real one. These are not small distinctions. And people invoke them as strongly as they will invoke the idea that there's a God or a Christ or a Messiah in the first place. I don't believe the rabbi really thinks it doesn't matter if someone is Buddhist or Jewish. I don't believe he's got to that ecumenical stage. I don't believe he does. If he does, he's in a very small minority in his community. I think these things must be taken seriously. Now, you asked me, and it's a joke question, do I think I'm going to paradise? Of course not. I wouldn't go if I was asked. I don't want to live in some fucking celestial North Korea, for one thing, where all I get to do is praise the dear leader from dawn till dusk. I don't want this. It would be hell for me. So let's get that clear. But when Rick Warren, who's invited to give the inauguration of an elected constitutional president of these United States, was asked in Colorado the other day by a Jewish woman, "Can I come to your paradise?" He says, "No." Well, screw him. And don't let's say that this is a nothing distinction. The trouble with religion only starts when people have affirmed that it's true. It only begins then. Then becomes the really nice bit, interreligious warfare. That's the really agreeable part.
The rabbi talks about religions listening to each other, but history shows the opposite. Christians once burned other Christians for translating the same Bible differently. The 30 Years' War wiped out millions across Europe over what kind of Christian you were. And even today, believers still divide over who's saved. Catholics say salvation is through their church. Many Protestants say Catholics aren't real Christians at all. Hitchens is right. Once people claim to know God's absolute truth, peace becomes impossible. The Bible itself shows how exclusive religion can be. John 14:6. No one comes to the Father except through me. That verse alone has justified centuries of exclusion and persecution. When Hitchens compares heaven to a celestial North Korea, he's not mocking belief. He's describing a dictatorship of the mind where questioning is forbidden and worship never ends. Real morality doesn't come from submission. It comes from freedom, from learning, empathy, and responsibility for our own actions. Humanity moves forward not by obedience, but by thinking for ourselves.
Why is religion so often associated with killing, wars, etc.? This is from Bill.
Well, Bill, religious people who engage in killing, war, and violence believe they are carrying out the dictates of their God. And so they are justified in doing whatever it is that they do. And there's a certain rational understanding of that, but it's also contrary in many ways to the heart of most of the religious traditions, that we are not God. We do not do what God does. And if God does that, then that's God's business, not ours. That's where the modesty bit comes in. And that's what makes of Christianity such a powerful and compelling witness against which so much of our tradition has gone. Christianity doesn't tell you to go out and kill people and do all these terrible things in the name of Jesus. In fact, it says quite the opposite. But that's what we do. And that's why we have to be taught. And that's why we have to confess. And that's why we have to be transformed.
Rabbi, you were motioning.
Yeah, Peter, I think maybe it works the other way around. It's not that religious people go out and kill and carry on wars. It's that people kill and carry on wars. And at some basic human level, they intuit that what they're doing is wrong. And so they look for the veneer of religion to cover it and justify what they are doing. They are kidnapping and misusing religion to excuse what they recognize as misbehavior.
Wouldn't that be exactly the other way around if we take the best-known territorial and ethnic and theological quarrel presently in the world, the Israel-Palestine dispute? There we have a small territory about the size of Wales, the other end of the Mediterranean. There are roughly as many Palestinian Arabs, Christian and Muslim, mainly more Muslim now than there were, as there are Israeli Jews. It's a very long-standing territorial dispute that's inherited by us from the League of Nations mandate. It's the oldest territorial quarrel on the international agenda. Everybody knows what the solution is. Two people's roughly equivalent claims to a parcel of land, and they're roughly the same population proportion. Something like a partition, something like a two-state solution, some version of this, is what is voted for by the international community, the European Union, the UN, the US, almost all American Jews, I think I can say, certainly the majority of Israeli Jews, more grudgingly by the majority of Palestinians, by several neighboring Arab states and so forth. This is obvious. The alternatives are too horrible to contemplate. Why can't we get it? Why can we not get it? Because the parties of God have a veto on the process. Small, true, but they are not baptizing retrospectively their crimes in the name of God. They're committing the original crimes as a divine mandate. They're saying, no, no, no. No one has the right to live here but us. God gave us this territory. It is holy land. Our God gives it all to us. It's exactly the opposite of what the rabbi just said. And we're all going to go to hell on a sled with this war, which is now I think, being made insoluble and incurable as a dispute.
Christopher, I would
remind you... If you think it's bad now, you wait and see how bad it is, because the parties of God are in charge. And that means civilization is going to be challenged.
I would remind you that at Taba in 2001, the Israeli government was prepared to sign on to a two-state solution. And Arafat refused to go along with it.
What if it meant kicking the mess Zionists out of the West Bank?
I have a final question for you. I'd like to start with you, Christopher Hitchens. I'm wondering...
Surely I've said enough. Who doesn't think that?
What keeps you up at night? And what gives you hope?
I'm certainly not going to tell you the first. And as for hope, I'm a great believer in the uses of pessimism. Once you've worked out that you are born into a losing struggle, and you don't take false consolation and you're not happy clapping, the sky can suddenly clear for a bit.
Rabbi, what keeps you up at night and what gives you hope?
Never quite sure what keeps me up at night. I'll tell you what gives me hope. Very often the question is phrased to me in terms of, do you think human beings are getting better or getting worse? And my answer is yes. I think in some ways we're getting better, in some ways we're getting worse. And I perceive a glacial but perceptible increase in human goodness. Behavior which was acceptable in wars generations ago is now at least controversial, if not forbidden. 19th century novels, is there a Dickens novel which doesn't have the death of children in every other chapter? That was taken as part of life. 21st century, the death of a child is a shattering tragedy. Behavior which we tolerated not that long ago is at least embarrassing and very often just proscribed. So I think we are slowly coming closer to the image of what the fully realized human being is going to be. And that gives me hope.
Professor?
What keeps me up at night from time to time, not every night, but from time to time, is the terrible fear that we will think we're so clever that we'll blow ourselves up. And I think that the nuclear button is a real terrifying existential dilemma. And the more of those nuclear buttons out there, the more I worry that some idiot in some position of authority will do it. And life as we know it will end. I do worry about that because I have very little confidence in the people who have the ultimate responsibility, no matter what country they're in, to prevent that from happening. What gives me hope is the ultimate conviction, the long-term conviction that human beings will come to their senses, and that is to say that there will be a desire to live out the highest aspirations of one's religious faith, and not simply the cultural or the minimal ones. I follow the philosopher, the mid-20th century, early 20th century, who was fond of saying that he was a short-term pessimist, but a long-term optimist. In the long run, he believed it would turn out all right. In the short run, people will do nasty and wicked things. And we just have to sort of get through that in order to get to that brighter thing. If I didn't have that hope, I don't think I would be a minister.
Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your wisdom.
When Hitchens takes on the question of religion and war, he exposes something most people are afraid to admit. Faith doesn't just justify violence, it often causes it. He brings up Israel and Palestine as a perfect example. Both sides know what peace looks like, yet they can't reach it because each believes God gave them the land. The result is endless conflict, where killing becomes sacred duty. History repeats this pattern. The Crusades, the Inquisition, the partition of India, even 9/11. Every time people claim divine permission to do what reason and empathy would forbid. The Bible itself is filled with commands of war, from Joshua's conquest of Canaan to God ordering Saul to destroy the Amalekites, including women and children. When you believe your orders come from heaven, there's no limit to what you'll justify on earth. That's Hitchens' warning. When the parties of God take charge, civilization steps backward. Real progress comes not from faith, but from skepticism, science, and human rights, the tools that hold even our own beliefs accountable. So let me ask you, do you think humanity can ever find peace while religion still claims moral authority over violence? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more thought-provoking discussions.